Given the mixed results legacy sequels have gotten, Beetlejuice Beetlejuice easily could have been relegated to box office purgatory. Luckily, it totally possessed the box office during its opening weekend, and for good reason. Deadpool and Wolverine has dominated the top of the box office charts ever since it came out on July 26th, except for a brief reprieve when Alien Romulus was #1 in its opening weekend. But with those sci-fi epics gradually running out of steam and nothing else particularly significant opening on September 6th, it was only natural for Beetlejuice Beetlejuice to clean house. The film took in $110 million domestically in its opening weekend, with an extra $35 million from overseas, bringing its total global gross so far to $145 million. The horror comedy sequel got off to a spectacular start in Wednesday and Thursday night previews, bringing in $12 million before it even officially came out on Friday. Those preview numbers put it on par with Dune Part 2 from earlier this year. As it stands, Beetlejuice Beetlejuice now has the second highest domestic opening weekend of any film ever released in September, topped only by 2017's It at $123 million. Funny enough, the previous second-place finish was held by another sequel, It Chapter 2, which earned $91 million during its opening frame in September 2019. After 36 years, the original Beetlejuice still holds up on a rewatch. Gen Xers can appreciate the darker elements of the movie, while still enjoying the film's most hilarious moments. Millennials may have been a bit younger when they were introduced to this goofy depiction of the afterlife, which may very well have informed the generation's largely darker sense of humor. Plus, depending on how old you were when you first saw it, frightening images like Adam and Barbara stretching out their faces to try and scare the deets may have scarred you for life. The original film is also a product of its time. For instance, Beetlejuice isn't the most appropriate demon around.
Am I overstepped my bounds? Just tell me, come on.
That also applies to the visual effects, which occasionally show their age. But stop-motion animation is always going to be a welcome sight to see in any movie. And the costumes and makeup make for a colorful and vibrant afterlife. Then there's the influence of Tim Burton. His filmography, particularly his earlier work, has made an impact on countless viewers and filmmakers. Movies like Beetlejuice, Edward Scissorhands, and The Nightmare Before Christmas helped to reimagine the fields of horror, fantasy, and animation. In turn, his interpretation of Batman redefined the character, the superhero genre, and the definition of a Hollywood blockbuster. Nearly 4 decades later, Beetlejuice remains the signature film of the Tim Burton brand. It makes sense that anyone who grew up with the 1988 movie Beetlejuice would turn out to see the sequel on its opening weekend. However, Beetlejuice Beetlejuice might have also grossed so much money thanks in part to Gen Z coming out. Curiously, it seems many Gen Zers love the pinstripe suit-wearing demon thanks to Beetlejuice the musical. The show opened on Broadway in 2019, and despite negative reviews from some prominent critics, it ended up being a huge smash. This was likely driven by an onslaught of younger theatergoers, with the Los Angeles Times noting that the musical placed greater emphasis on Lydia as a stronger protagonist. The publication stated, "This Lydia resonates with younger audiences, not because she drops hollow buzzwords, but rather because she is wholly realized as a Gen Z protagonist, clever, socially aware, reasonably nihilistic, and emotionally honest." If one was on TikTok around 2019 and the beginning of 2020, they may have been greeted with numerous videos of Gen Zers dancing and lip-syncing to some of the musical numbers, particularly Say My Name. Trends such as this one prove that Beetlejuice as an idea goes beyond any single generation and has continued to find audiences in a variety of mediums. You might assume Beetlejuice Beetlejuice would be a natural for an October release date to play up its macabre vibes. But opening the film at the beginning of September may be an incredibly fortuitous move for its total box office haul. As Slash film box office expert Ryan Scott pointed out, it gets to hang around all the way until Halloween, giving it nearly 2 months to reasonably make its money. Scott also noted, "September is often an abandoned month by Hollywood, and the right movie can make use of that." Other than the front room, nothing else really opened alongside Beetlejuice Beetlejuice, which was likely a smart move. The sequel should have a good run in the weeks ahead. While Speak No Evil arrives on September 13th as an R-rated horror flick, it probably won't draw as big of a crowd as something the whole family can see. The 2024 summer movie season got off to quite a rocky start, with both The Fall Guy and Furiosa losing a ton of money.
You two break my heart.
However, thanks to hits like Deadpool and Wolverine, Alien Romulus, and now Beetlejuice Beetlejuice, things are looking much better for the theatrical experience as we head into the fall. It's been 36 years since people last saw the Dietz family and their demon. so fans were almost certainly itching to revisit these beloved characters. Of course, Michael Keaton is back as Beetlejuice, returning on the condition that the freelance bioexorcist wouldn't be used more than necessary. This is keeping with the original film, in which the larger-than-life ghost only has about 17 minutes of screen time. For its part, the sequel also utilizes the character judiciously, focusing more on the interpersonal relationships between 3 generations of Dietz women. Speaking of which, it's not every day people get to see Winona Ryder in a new movie. Despite being in high demand throughout the 1990s in films like Edward Scissorhands and Bram Stoker's Dracula, most people these days probably know her best as Joyce Byers on Stranger Things. Additionally, Lydia remains a beloved goth icon, and those who grew up watching her as a rebellious teenager now get the chance to see her as a mom trying to connect with her daughter.
Death is hard.
Yeah, sometimes I think life is harder.
Catherine O'Hara is always welcome on our screens, and she returns as Delia Dietz. O'Hara has generated a lot of goodwill as of late, thanks to playing Moira Rose on Schitt's Creek. Some folks are missing, like Alec Baldwin and Gina Davis, but there's enough of the original cast to make it worth a trip to the theater to see these iconic characters once more. Jenna Ortega has gone through a drastic transformation from Disney Channel star to certified scream queen. She's frequently listed as one of the young stars taking Hollywood by storm, with Ryan Scott saying, Ortega ensured that this sequel wasn't purely a nostalgia play. It gave younger audience members a way in. It also certainly helped in terms of getting the movie play on social media, as well as with the press tour. Spooky projects certainly seem to be in Ortega's wheelhouse at the moment. She was a big part of the 2 most recent Scream movies, and this is her second collaboration with director Tim Burton, who spearheaded Netflix's Wednesday. Ortega is a big draw for Gen Z, as Scott stated, since she brings a level of authenticity and often uses her platform to speak out on larger social issues. It's similar to what drew Gen Z to Lydia in the Beetlejuice musical, and Ortega seems refreshingly real as opposed to creating a fake persona suitable for social media. Of course, not every movie starring Ortega has done well at the box office. Just look at Miller's Girl, a controversial erotic thriller that only recently blew up on Netflix. Beetlejuice Beetlejuice plays into Ortega's strengths and sensibilities, so it's not particularly surprising that people wanted to see her carry on the Dietz legacy. Tim Burton has amassed legions of fans over the years. After making a name for himself throughout the 1980s and 90s, his output has decreased in recent years, with his last film being 2019's live-action Dumbo. Burton actually stated that he believed Dumbo would be his last Disney movie, saying, "I realized that I was Dumbo, that I was working in this horrible big circus, and I needed to escape." That movie is quite autobiographical at a certain level. Since then, Burton has directed 4 episodes of Netflix's Wednesday, in addition to producing the show. But it's been a while since fans have seen a proper Burton movie on the big screen. Combine that with the fact that Beetlejuice is arguably the most iconic Tim Burton character ever, and it feels like a slam dunk that gives people the opportunity to see what else a filmmaker has up his sleeve.
The juice is loose.
Audiences may be lucky they got a new Tim Burton movie at all. The director admitted to Empire that he was burnt out on making films. But Wednesday reignited his passion. He was drawn to direct Beetlejuice Beetlejuice to his connection to Lydia. He explained, "It was a character that I understood, that I felt very strongly about. What happened to Lydia? You know, what happens to people? What happens to all of us? What's your journey from a gothic kind of weird teenager to what happens to you 35 years later?" Filmmaking technology has come a long way since 1988. When news of a new Beetlejuice movie came around, some fans wondered whether CGI would replace practical visual effects. Fortunately, those fears were alleviated when the trailer came out and showed that the same aesthetic from the first film will be implemented in the sequel. For example, the shot of the sandworm indicated that stop-motion animation would still have a role in this movie. There's undoubtedly some CGI used throughout the movie, but adhering to the same look as the first film only increases the nostalgic appeal. Burton explained to Entertainment Weekly why it had to be that way, saying, "It needed a back-to-basics handmade quality. It's re-energized why I love making movies. There's no denying that the sequel looks completely different from anything else in theaters at the moment, which could also explain why audiences are flocking to see it." Plenty of legacy sequels have come out over the past few years, and while it's one thing to follow up a beloved property, it's another thing entirely for it to actually be good. Some, like Jurassic World Dominion, made a lot of money despite poor reviews. But when a legacy sequel actually does a good job of continuing its story, it's a win for everyone. One could look at the box office success of Top Gun Maverick for how to do the concept right, and it appears the Beetlejuice sequel has achieved that same goal. Rotten Tomatoes critics overwhelmingly agree that Beetlejuice Beetlejuice was a worthy endeavor, and as of 3 days into its wide release, the film has a 77% positive rating from critics and 82% from general audiences on the platform. While some reviewers criticized the scattershot plot, it earned high marks for its nostalgia factor, and for bringing back Michael Keaton as a ghost with the most. That's probably more than enough for audiences who wanted to watch something entertaining this past weekend, to the point where they could overlook any flaws and just enjoy the wild ride. It's understandable why studios would be interested in legacy sequels as a concept. Nostalgia is all the rage, so if you can make a follow-up to a movie that came out 20 or 30 years ago, especially with some original cast members attached, people should flock to theaters. Again, just look at Top Gun or the Jurassic World and Scream franchises. However, 2024's legacy sequel contributions have seen more mixed results.
Legacy characters. Not quite a reboot, not quite a sequel.
Ghostbusters Frozen Empire brought back Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, and Ernie Hudson from the original film and ended up grossing a little over $200 million globally against a $100 million budget. It's not terrible, but isn't a standout success either. Twisters is a far more intriguing case study, as it doesn't include any original actors, instead focusing on a new crop of tornado chasers led by Glenn Powell and Daisy Edgar Jones. Despite this difference, the film has grossed well over $360 million worldwide and counting. With a stellar opening weekend, Beetlejuice Beetlejuice looks like it will perform closer to Twisters than Ghostbusters in terms of financial success. Of course, the film didn't accomplish this with nostalgia alone. There needs to be something else, whether it's a good story, a beloved character, or an emphasis on a certain visual style. Beetlejuice Beetlejuice had a perfect mix of factors to make it a hit, and it's bound to make the prospect of a third Beetlejuice attractive to Warner Brothers.